Hey everybody, my name's Democracy, and we're back with more of the best and worst bosses in Blood Souls. Let's jump right in with number 84.
Osiris, not a good fight.
Okay, I think a few of you might be upset about the order on this one, but I gotta stay true, and I actually kinda like the Deacons. First, they've got some neat lore about the Deacons protecting the Tomb of Aldrich, suggesting they actually serve him. That and the fact that they use pyromancies instead of miracles suggests they'd be considered heretics. Well, you get to be the one to cleanse them of their sins, and while it's far from perfectly executed, it's a lot of fun Deacon slaying. The first time through, the whole red aura mechanic was a little puzzling, and I actually died to their curse because I had no idea what was going on. Sure, they're a cakewalk on consecutive playthroughs, but even then, it's just plain fun hacking and slashing your way through a bunch of these goobers. So, this was the boss that received the most votes for worst boss in our community rankings. I can certainly understand that perspective. For the most part, Migolosh is a glorified hunter fight with uninteresting battle mechanics, but I actually did enjoy the chase a little bit. I can't give it more than a few points because it isn't that hard to get frustratingly lost, but it's still fun. That's almost entirely due to Migolosh's dialogue. This guy hams it up every second he gets, and it's hilariously enlightening to listen to.
Majestic!
His words give so much context to the plot, the nightmare you've been pulled into, and the motivations behind the School of Mensis.
As you once did for the vacuous Rome, grant us eyes. Grant us eyes.
Admittedly though, this fight can be annoying as hell on additional playthroughs, so I couldn't rank it any higher.
Now I'm waking up! I'll forget everything!
Good.
These fucking gankers, man. It's got all the worst problems our bosses at the bottom of our list had. Its lazy design has absolutely no lore inspiration other than the idea that, hey, these looters and polluters came seeking the treasures of Sanctum City, and its cheap tacked on ganking difficulty. That said, I still had a lot of fun with it. Getting the opportunity to take on 1 vs 3 exploitable NPCs is right up my alley. Because as you know, I am the best at PvP. Honestly, a lot of the fun I had was probably due to the fact I had never faced these guys before the boss ranking series, and I was dreading it. I had heard a bunch of horror stories. What's Havel doing here? How did you get Lucatiel's mask? Who the fuck are you? But I beat it on my first go and was on cloud 9. Maybe that distorted my view, but I only remember the fight being a thrilling juggling act. I've finally done it, Gravelords. The Adjudicator? Adjudicator? Adjudicator. This boss is one I'd like to see another iteration of in a later FromSoft title. I guess you could argue the concept is similar to the Great Wood, but no, I'm not talking about that again. I really dig the idea of having to hit the boss in a certain spot to do meaningful damage to him, but there's a few missteps. First, he attacks so slowly it's a breeze hitting the weak spot. Second, if you knock it down with him once, he's dead, and if he's not, he'll happily go kill himself when he gets up. So while I love the concept of this boss, I don't think it's been executed perfectly even to this day. I'm not gonna let my salt get in the way of the fact that this is a well-designed boss. Other than the bullshit quake that I've talked about ad nauseum, this is an incredibly frantic battle against a towering foe. It feels like no matter where you run, there's no escape, so instead you have to get good at dodging if you want to come out on top. Unfortunately though, there's no lore to go along with the boss, and I just can't get over that shitquake, so I penalize it heavily in entertainment. Still, I could see this boss being much higher on the list for some of you. The old hero is another boss with excellent mechanics. The hero is blind and instead tracks you by movement and sound. The problem here is less with the boss and more with the imbalance of the Thief's Ring. If you use this ring, and it's so damn good, there's no reason not to. It makes it almost impossible for this dope to hear you. That means you can waltz up behind him, hack away, run and repeat until he's dead. So I'll akin this fight to the Agile whatever. It's a fight I'd like to see repeated again with modern AI. Belsat has some cool lore. He's the trusted right-hand knight of King Vendrick. He once had a partner in Rain, but ultimately dueled it out with him and won. Rain was seen as a traitor, and he became the sole protector of the king. And now this guy guards Vendrick's hollowed shell in the Undead Crypt. This could be seen as undying loyalty, or perhaps even foul play from Nishandra to make sure only a worthy foe makes it to Vendrick. Whatever you believe, the lore makes it disappointing that Belsat is such a pushover! How could a guy that doesn't put up a valiant fight against you take down Rain? The main problem is that his design feels so similar to the big knights you face in Hyde's Tower of Flame. I actually had more trouble with those in the early game than Belsat. That mixed with some questionable hitboxes make Belsat not a perfect representation of his lore, but still somewhat enjoyable. This is a very drawn out fight, and that's thanks to Murgo's ability to freeze you if you try to hit the queen more than once or twice. This freezing mechanic makes what could be a great fight rather annoying. The queen has a few different phases. At first she holds a dagger and shoots blood. Around 75%, she breaks out the Blades of Mercy and tries to go ham. Then she makes clones of herself, gets some dangerous bloody attacks that add a real sense of danger at every turn. I just cannot get past that damn freezing garbage. Seriously, if this battle didn't have that, I'd probably have this fight at least in the top 40. Such a shame. The Moon Presence is like the evolution of lore fodder. Its main purpose is as a lore device, but at least the fight has somewhat interesting mechanics. While the boss largely feels like most of the beasts you face throughout the game, it has one unique attack that takes all but one of your HP. It has to recharge for a while afterward, giving you a chance to recover, so I'm not sure this is a perfectly balanced move, but at least it's something different. Then there's the potential lore theories. The Moon Presence is the host of the Hunter's Dream, but what are its motivations? Does it want to enlist hunters to exterminate the other great ones to consolidate its power? Or maybe it's just in it for that sweet embrace. And did I mention that it has an empty chest cavity? That's nasty, man! Woo woo! Hallway simulator! More! Alright, maybe it's not so bad. There's at least some cool lore behind Gwendolyn. He's one of Gwen's sons that was born so feminine they decided to raise him as a girl. That's, alright then. But the real interesting part is that he created the specter of Guinevere we see in Anor Londo. Well then let me thank you, my fair lady, because without you, we wouldn't have been treated to... So what are Gwendolyn's motivations? Is he protective of his father and wants to ensure you don't get a chance at the old man? I believe there's evidence to suggest that he enlisted ONS to protect the Lord Vessel, but we'll save that for another time. The fight itself isn't horrible, it's just more boring than anything else. My idea of fun isn't exactly waiting behind pillars to run like a madman, but I can at least give it props for being somewhat unique. The experience with the Ruined Sentinels is highly dependent on how you handle it. If you jump off the first platform, then you're gonna get wrecked by all three at once. But as long as you utilize the platform, this fight is very manageable. There were a lot of multi-boss fights in Dark Souls 2, and I do think giving you legitimate ways to use crowd control makes this fight better than most of them. But the design and difficulty still feels dependent on there being multiple of them more than anything else, so it's hard to praise it too highly. Speaking of a Tale of Two Bosses kind of fight, Elena is the queen of RNG. You've got two possibilities. She's either gonna summon a few pushover skellies or you're gonna be dealing with Belsat. Yeah, you know how I said Belsat isn't that hard? Well, that's because he's solo. Balancing the two of them is a serious challenge. Despite this, I don't actually think it's horrible design. Elena being slow mixes well with the faster skellies or Belsat. I just wish the arena was designed in a more clever way to allow for better crowd control like the Sentinels. Even so, I don't find myself remembering the fight very fondly. Even though a slower boss was needed for this design, it makes the fight against Elena herself very underwhelming. I'm gonna keep this brief, not because I think Vanguard is a bad boss, but because I don't have a lot of footage to show since he wrecked my ass so fast. That's what this guy is all about though. If you manage to make it through the tutorial, then he's here to make sure you don't feel like you won anything by beating you down. And for the time, his design is pretty decent. We can definitely thank him for being the Asylum Demon's inspiration at the least. It's really hard to give this fight much credit since it's largely a copy-paste of Ornstein from Dark Souls, but that doesn't mean it can't be fun. For me, it was actually the first time fighting Ornstein solo since I always go for Super Smo in that fight. The unfortunate thing is that his mechanics don't stand up too well on his own. The strategy is mostly strafe for days and then punish, but at least for a couple of moments you're reminded of one of the series' finest hours. This is it, we've reached the halfway point, and you know, it's pretty funny that more than half of the Dark Souls 2 bosses have already shown up. I wonder what that says about the game's bosses. But since we've reached the penultimate average fight in the series, what can really be said? The difficulty is well balanced for endgame, the design is pretty good, it can feel difficult to manage these two at times due to the lack of crowd control features in the arena, but it's still above average. The lore is, well, there's a throne and that one's watching it and that one's defending it, and the fight is at least a little entertaining. But at the end of the day, most of the features of this fight feel painfully average in a final desperate attempt at a gank boss to rival ONS. Sorry Throne Watcher and Defender, I cannot say you lived up to that greatness. Well everyone, I hope you enjoyed checking out today's bosses with me. Since we're at the halfway point, everything ahead is above the average. It'll be real nice to focus on the series highlights for a while. If you're excited too, I encourage you to like the video and share it with a friend. If you want all the latest updates on the series, follow me on Twitter. And for more great Blood Souls content, be sure to subscribe. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.